Okay, my second and third grade friends, we talked about color and emotion. So you have filled out your color and emotion chart in your sketchbook, right? You identified some different feelings and then started labeling which colors they go with. Now we are moving on to applying how color and emotion can be put into artwork. So we are going to be creating a color monster today. Now, there's the reading for the color monster, and I also put a reading for one of my favorite books. Yes, I read that whole thing and recorded it. Was Everything I Know About Monsters by Tom Lichtenheld. Those are two good stories. One, the color monster, is a little bit on the younger side, and my kindergarten and first grade students are actually just making a color monster from that story. But for second and third grade, I also wanted to add the other story to kind of get your imagination jump started onto how you can create other monsters, right? Like that grape jello monster was all wiggly and tickly. So think about the difference between something that might be a silly, funny monster versus something that would be like an angry, ferocious monster versus something that might be like a scared monster, maybe a monster who's afraid to come out from under your bed. So you're going to be inventing your own monsters today. I'm going to do two quick examples. However, I want you to know for this project, you can do whatever you want for your monster. You can make a group of monsters that all have different feelings, like the Descendants, you know, how they each have their own color with their own thing. So you can create like a little family of monsters where they each have their feelings, but the facial expressions and their action, like whatever they're doing, should match their feelings. So if you have an angry monster, and you're making that monster say like red and black and orange, maybe the arms are up, maybe it's doing an angry motion, as opposed to like if you have a scared monster, maybe he's standing a little bit differently, maybe he's got a different face. So your face and your body language, think about those when you're designing your monster. So I'm going to do two examples just to get you started. One of my monsters is going to be a little bit of a scary, freaky monster, and the other one is going to be a sillier, fun monster. Today, you're only drawing your monster, so you don't even have to worry about pulling your colors out, right? That's next week. That's why I'm not doing that yet. Today, we are going to draw our monsters, and if you use pencil and you want to outline it in Sharpie, you can outline it today also. We're not adding our color today, but I want you to think about that color because you should have that feeling. You should have that emotion in mind. You should have a visual image of what it's going to look like as you're creating. So let's get started. All right, if you read Everything I Know About Monsters with me on the Read Aloud, you will recognize this cover, right? And you can see that there are three different monsters on this cover and they each have different feelings. This one's a little bit more ferocious, right? This one is saying ooga gooba gooba in his mouth. So he's a little bit sillier. He's got a sock dripping out of his mouth. So when you're thinking about how to create your monster, take some inspiration from other monsters you've seen. Maybe you like the way that his eyes are on these squiggly antennas. Maybe you like how fuzzy this purple one is. Or maybe you like how it has 3 eyes or 1 eye instead of just 2 eyes like a normal person would have. Look at the hands and feet, right? Does it have claws? Does it have toenails? If it's a funny monster, should it have sharp claws or would it have more wiggly fingers? So keep those things in mind as you start building your monster. So together, let's make some monsters. You can watch me create some of my monsters. This is going to be sped up slightly so that you don't have to watch it in real time. When I'm creating this first monster, I wanted it to kind of be a close-up, cropped image of a monster. So what does that mean, to crop? We talked about it in Block 1, Week 1. Cropping means you're cutting off part of it. So when you're cropping the picture, I'm not going to draw the whole monster, including his entire body. I'm focusing on his face. So maybe you can think about this like a yearbook photo. When you have your photo in the yearbook, you don't see the entire picture of you. We only see the close-up of like your head, neck, and shoulders. So I'm creating a ferocious, kind of scary monster here. Those things that came to my mind when I was doing this were like fangs, horns. I have the eyebrows tilted in to give him that angry look. And now I'm creating his neck and his shoulders. So as you go about it, you could always erase anything. We start with pencil, draw light till it's right. So you're going to see me using my eraser a lot. You can go back and edit as you work as well. So I've added some spikes down his back also, and I decided that it was going to be covered in like a fur, so I started adding some zigzag lines. Now I'm going to create the action that he's doing. He's reaching his arm way up over his head and kind of grabbing onto his horn. So I'm creating the hand here, and since he is a scary, creepy kind of monster, I'm going to add some sharp talons onto his fingers here. So you can see those sharp pointy talons kind of make his hands look even a little more creepy than they did before. And then I'm just going to go in and erase anything that's left over. So continue to add details to your monster as you work. You may notice that it will make it more alive as you continue to add different details. So you might think your monster's done, and then you may go back and add some more things. So continue adding, continue erasing, continue editing. I didn't like that I was going to put another arm there, but I didn't quite like it. So instead I'm going to add some stuff dripping off of his fangs as my extra details. Now this monster, as I'm picturing it in my head, I think I want to do this one in like a comic book style, so maybe crayon or marker. So I'm going to trace this one with a black Sharpie. I would recommend using a Sharpie when you trace, because what if I want to do it in watercolor? I don't want a washable marker to start blending and mixing with my watercolor, or if I want to use something else. So if you don't have a Sharpie, you can always outline it in a black crayon. Or if you are going to use marker, regular washable marker, you can outline it in a black marker too. But kind of think about what you're thinking for your monster. How are you going to be completing it? Are you going to use oil pastels? Are you going to use colored pencil? Are you going to use crayon? Because that will depend on whether or not you outline your monster and what you use to outline your monster. Okay, so there is my close-up, cropped, kind of freaky monster. Since I traced it, you know one of my favorite things to do is trace and erase. So get rid of any of those leftover pencil lines that you may have peeking out from where you didn't trace exactly on your line. So this is an example here of a close-up, creepy, angry, kind of terrifying monster. But I also want to show you, if you don't want to outline it and you want to do a full monster body instead of a cropped version, I'm going to do an example of that now also. So stick with me if you're still thinking about doing maybe an angry, creepy, scary monster. Get some more ideas as we go. Remember that your monster is not human. It does not have to have one head and 2 eyes and 2 arms and 2 legs. It's a monster. It can have 3 heads, it can have 1 eye, it can have 4 arms. It doesn't even need to have arms. So think about those things as you create your monster. Make sure your monster doesn't end up looking like your best friend. To keep mine from looking human at all, I've added tentacle arms like an octopus or a squid would have, and then I added some pincher spider-like legs on the bottom. Right now I'm trying to think about what to do on top of his head, but I can't really come up with an idea. So as I'm looking at my monster, I decided, you know what, he could really use another leg. So I'm going to add a 3rd leg in there. So now he's really starting to look like a squid spider as I create my monster. Remember, adding more details will usually improve your idea. So keep going, keep adding, and keep changing. A final finishing touch for this monster, I've decided to take an inspiration from Swamp Thing and add some fins on his face. So here's a full, kind of creepy monster that I'm going to leave in pencil and maybe finish with oil pastel. Like I promised, I will do 2 examples. So we did our creepy, kind of scary, angry sort of monster. Now I'm going to show you some examples for what a silly, fun, cuddly, nice monster might look like. Again, you have your option of either doing a cropped close-up monster or pulling back so that we can see the entire monster's body, including his face. Remember that your expression should match your monster's feeling. So in my last one, they had sharp teeth and fangs. Their arms were kind of up doing a scary motion. Now that I'm doing a silly monster, his eyes are going to be kind of closed. I'm making some eyelids that cover part of his eyes so that his eyes aren't wide open and scary like before. You can see that since this is my kind of goofy monster, I added a little smile with some baby teeth. I gave him a slug body, so he's like all wiggly and jiggly, kind of cuddly. And I'm adding wings instead of arms because he's a monster. Who said he has to have arms? I wanted this one to have wings, and since he's a monster, you can do whatever you want. Then think about some details. I'm starting to think about what colors I want to add, so I decided to add some polka dots so that I'd have more options for different places to add color, and just making some finishing touches on this monster as well. So now that we've done a full monster, I think I'm going to work on a cropped monster here for my second example of my silly, funny, goofy kind of monster. Since I did a full body on the last one, I'm just going to focus more on the face for this one and get a really good close-up of the face. I think you can tell that when I make silly, nice monsters, I like to add eyelids on there. Eyelids give you the idea that your monster's kind of chill, maybe a little sleepy, and much more calm than if the eyes are really wide open, because that's more of a surprised look or more of a jarring look when your eyes are really wide open. And it also gives you a chance to make some eyelashes on yours if you want to. Now that my eyes are done, I'm going to go down and work on the mouth. Since this is kind of a funny monster, I made a big open mouth with a big old tongue hanging out of it. And since it's not a scary monster, I'm going to use rounded teeth instead of sharp teeth. That way this monster doesn't look scary. As I'm making my monster, I'm starting to think, what is it going to be covered in? Is it feathers? Is it going to be fur? Is it going to be scales? I'm going to go with a big fuzzy ball for this one. So he's going to have fur covering his whole face here, and it's going to go all the way around that light pencil line that I make. Because it's silly, I'm also going to add some drool dripping out from around the tongue. And then I have all this empty space on top. So I'm thinking about maybe having some sort of antenna that would light up because, you know, that way you can see in the dark since he's my silly monster. So I'm going to have a light up antenna on top. I'm looking at my picture and it looks pretty good. I think I'm going to want to outline this one to make it a little more graphic. So I'm going to grab my Sharpie and get to outlining. All right, I'm just going to finish up the rest of these outlines here for the eyes and the eyelashes. And then, as you should know by now, my favorite thing to do after we trace is always to grab your eraser and get rid of any of those leftover pencil lines that might be sneaking out. So you can grab your eraser, trace and erase. And there you have it. Another silly, goofy monster to go with my first one, whether it's cropped or whole. So I hope my two examples of each type of monster helps kickstart your ideas. I highly recommend that if you go back and rewatch the very last part of Everything I Know About Monsters by Tom Lichtenheld, there's that patented monster maker where I was reading down the whole list. So if you pick something from each column, you might have like a purple slimy ghoul or a terrifying hairy monster. So that can help get your ideas flowing as well. Also, since we are all pretty good at using the internet now, there are a lot of how-to draw videos. So if you use YouTube or if you use other drawing books or drawing apps, you can also use those to help you. But I don't want to see a monster I've ever seen before. I want you to use those ideas and then apply them to your own monster. So if you're using ideas or borrowing things from other monsters, maybe from a monster book or from a monster movie, think about how you can borrow one part and then kind of make a mix and match mashup monster. That is hard to say. So I hope that these have gotten you started. You can see that whether you outline it in black right now, I'm going to color this one later, I said, with probably marker or crayon. I'm not sure yet, but I definitely know my colors for this one. I could picture them when I was making it. Or whether you leave it in pencil for now because you're not sure what you want to do with it later. I was thinking about using pastel for this one, so I didn't really want to use an outline on it. That's up to you. So you're creating just one. I made 4, but you're creating just one monster that has some kind of feeling. And remember to keep those colors in mind for next week when we start coloring these monsters.